Broken Vows, Secret Desire. Chapter 1. I can't keep pretending I don't crave you, Clara. The words slammed into me before I even sat down at his penthouse dining table. No small talk about the wine he'd uncorked, no polite mention of the rain streaking the floor-to-ceiling windows. Elias Voss, 38, my mother's closest college friend, the man I'd hidden a burning, all-consuming love for 4 full years, stared across the marble surface like he'd finally torn open a lock he'd bolted shut for too long. I'm 24. Mom calls him her lifelong brother, drags him to every family dinner, every holiday getaway, every birthday gathering we host at our lake house. Everyone acts like we're nothing more than casual acquaintances separated by 14 years of age, bound only by my mother's decades-long friendship with him. No one suspects I lie awake most nights replaying every second I spend near him. No one sees how I linger by doorways just to catch his voice, how I turn down every date with men my age, because none of them hold a candle to Elias. He's married to a cold, socialite heiress named Margot. Their marriage is a public performance, a contract forged to merge 2 old-money European families. Margot lives half the year in Paris, spends the rest attending galas and sneaking affairs with male models, and barely acknowledges Elias when they share the same roof. He's trapped in a loveless, hollow union just as I'm trapped behind a mask of innocent, youthful niece-like politeness every time our families cross paths. I'd driven across the city tonight, after a screaming fight with Mom earlier that evening. She'd caught me staring at Elias during our backyard barbecue, teased me for having a silly schoolgirl crush on an older family friend, and demanded I stop acting so starstruck around him. The jab split open every secret I'd buried, so I'd grabbed my keys and raced to his address on a reckless, impulsive whim I couldn't control. I'd only planned to apologize for Mom's awkward comment, to make a quick, quiet exit before I embarrassed myself further. Instead, Elias cut off every attempt at civility before I could utter a single sentence. My fingers tightened around the strap of my crossbody bag, heart hammering so hard I could hear it thundering in my ears. You shouldn't say things like that. Mom trusts you. Margot's your wife. We can't. Can't what? He pushed his chair back, stood, and closed the short distance between us in 3 long strides. His tailored charcoal suit fit every hard line of his frame, the faint cedar cologne he always wore wrapping around me until my lungs felt lightheaded. Can't admit the tension that's hung between us for years. Can't admit you run to every event I attend, just to catch a glance at me. Can't admit you flinch every time another man touches you because none of them make your blood burn the way I do. I stepped backward until my hips hit the edge of the table, trapped between the cold stone surface and his towering frame. Panic tangled with desperate longing in my chest. 4 years of silent yearning, 4 years of forcing myself to look away when his eyes met mine, 4 years of swallowing every confession bubbling on my tongue, all threatened to spill out right here, right now. Your marriage matters. My mother's friendship matters. Society will tear us apart if anyone finds out about whatever this is. My voice cracked halfway through the sentence, betraying the resolve I'd fought so hard to maintain. We're supposed to stay separated by lines we're not allowed to cross. Elias lifted one hand, his knuckle brushing soft against my cheek, a touch so gentle it made my eyes sting. Margot and I haven't shared a bed in 2 years. Our marriage exists solely for board meetings and charity press photos. There's no love, no loyalty, nothing holding us together except a prenuptial agreement neither of us dares break for financial ruin. Your mother's friendship means everything to me, but I won't spend the rest of my life denying the only person who's ever made me feel alive. I bit down hard on my lower lip to hold back a sob. All this time I'd thought my feelings were one-sided, a foolish juvenile infatuation I'd grow out of eventually. I'd spent countless nights convincing myself Elias only saw me as the daughter of his best friend, a kid to look after out of obligation. I never imagined he carried the same forbidden, scorching obsession I did. What do you want from me? I whispered, gaze locked on his dark hazel eyes. Everything. His hand slid down to curl loosely around my jaw, tilting my face upward so I couldn't avoid his stare. I want to take you away from every judgmental gaze, every rule that says we don't belong together. I want to stop hiding how badly I want you every time we're in the same room. I want to stop watching you date boys who don't deserve a fraction of your heart. A sharp knock echoed through the penthouse entryway before I could respond. Elias's entire body stiffened instantly, his grip falling away from my face as if he'd been burned. The color drained from his features, every trace of raw vulnerability vanishing behind a cold, guarded mask of composure. Who's here? I breathed, panic spiking again. No one knew I'd come to see him tonight. I'd left without texting anyone, no witness to my reckless trip across the city. Margot. Elias's voice dropped to a low, strained murmur. She flew back from Paris early this morning without telling me she'd landed. She hates unannounced visits, only drops by when she suspects something's off. My blood turned to ice in my veins. Margot loathed me from the second we met. She'd made snide, cutting comments about my young, naive fixation on Elias at our last holiday party, accused me of intentionally clinging to him to stir trouble between them. If she found the two of us alone in his private penthouse after dark, with the charged tension still thick enough to touch between us, she'd manufacture a scandal that would destroy both my family's reputation and Elias's business empire overnight. Hide. Down the guest hallway, first closet on the left. Lock the door and don't make a sound no matter what you hear. Elias spoke fast, urgency sharp in every syllable, already stepping toward the front door to intercept his wife before she walked fully inside. I'll get rid of her as quickly as I can. Don't come out until I text you 3 times in a row. I didn't hesitate. I spun on my heel and sprinted down the shadowed guest corridor he'd pointed to, yanking open the closet door and slipping inside, clicking the small metal lock shut behind me. The narrow space reeked of his spare leather jackets and expensive shoe polish, every breath filling my nose with his scent, amplifying the chaotic mix of fear and longing swirling through my body. Through the thin wooden closet door, I heard the front door swing open, Margot's icy, posh French accent cutting through the quiet penthouse air. Darling, I saw a young woman's sports car parked in the underground garage when I pulled in. Care to explain who's visiting your apartment after 10 p.m. on a weeknight? Chapter 2. Elias's calm, practiced response filtered through the wood to my hiding spot. A junior associate from the firm dropped off last quarter's merger files. She left 5 minutes before you arrived. Margot let out a sharp, mocking laugh that sent a shiver down my spine. A junior associate driving a custom matte blue Porsche. I know every lawyer on your team, Elias. None of them can afford a vehicle that expensive. Don't lie to me. I've suspected you've got a secret little toy on the side for months now. My hands curled into tight fists at my sides inside the closet. She already suspected infidelity, already kept tabs on every vehicle entering his building's parking garage. If she searched the penthouse and found me crammed into this tiny storage space, she'd file for a vicious, public divorce within hours, leaking every fabricated rumor about our forbidden entanglement to every tabloid magazine across Europe and the States. My mother would never forgive either of us. Our family's social standing would crumble, and Elias's decades of built corporate success would collapse under scandal. I heard the click of her stiletto heels against marble flooring as she wandered deeper into the penthouse, moving past the dining room where we'd just stood minutes prior. I'll search every room. If I find anyone hiding here, I'll send footage of the two of you to every contact I have in the press. You know I don't care how much damage this does to our family's fortune. I'd rather burn everything down than share my husband with some girl barely old enough to drink champagne legally. Elias's tone hardened, sharp with suppressed anger. This is my private residence, Margot. You have no right to storm in uninvited and rummage through my home based on baseless paranoia. The car belongs to a client's daughter who stopped by to deliver paperwork on her father's behalf. There's no one else here. Baseless. Her heels halted directly outside the guest hallway door, mere feet from where I cowered locked in the closet. I watched her walk through the building lobby an hour ago. Blonde hair, cream leather jacket, the same girl who's glued to your side at every family gathering your friend hosts. Clara Bennett, isn't it? The 24-year orphaned girl your closest friend raised like her own daughter. My heart stopped beating entirely. She'd memorized my appearance, tracked my movements, put a name to the vague suspicion she'd carried for months. There was no way to lie our way out of this if she pulled open the closet door right now. I heard her palm press flat against the wooden guest room door, the faint creak of the handle, as she twisted it open, and stepped inside the empty bedroom attached to my hiding closet. I'll check every nook and cranny in this room. If I catch her hiding, Elias, your prenuptial clause protecting your assets vanishes instantly. I'll take 70% of your company holdings, and make sure Clara's mother disowns her permanently. Panic clawed at my throat. I pulled out my silent phone from my bag, fingers shaking so badly I nearly dropped the device, ready to send a desperate text to Elias begging for a way out. Before I could type a single word, I heard heavy footsteps retreat back toward the main living area, followed by the sound of a wine bottle being set roughly onto a countertop. Fine. I'll drop the search for tonight, but mark my words, I'm hiring private investigators first thing tomorrow morning to follow every move Clara Bennett makes. If the two of you so much as exchange a lingering glance at the next charity gala, I'll blow this whole sordid little secret wide open for the entire world to gawk at. Margot's voice dripped with venomous disdain. I tolerate your boredom and our loveless marriage for business purposes only, but I will never tolerate you entertaining a child half my age behind my back. Elias didn't respond. I heard the front door slam shut minutes later, silence crashing over the penthouse once Margot's car pulled out of the underground lot. I waited a full 3 minutes, trembling in the dark closet, before 3 rapid text alerts pinged my phone screen, Elias's prearranged signal for me to emerge safely. I unlocked the closet door and stepped out into the empty guest bedroom, legs weak from adrenaline and terror. Elias stood in the hallway doorway, his face lined with stress, every trace of the passionate vulnerability he'd shown me earlier replaced with weary dread. She's not bluffing about the private investigators or the tabloids, he said, crossing the room to close the distance between us again, this time moving slower, as if afraid I'd run from him now that the reality of our dangerous situation had sunk in. Margot holds all the media connections in our family's circle. She can ruin both of us before sunrise, if she gets solid proof we're seeing each other privately. I leaned back against the bedroom wall, staring at the floor. I should leave. I never should have driven over here tonight. Mom was already suspicious enough, now Margot's watching my every move. If we keep meeting like this, everyone we love gets hurt. Leaving won't erase how we feel about each other. Elias reached out, brushing a strand of loose blonde hair behind my ear, his touch softer than before, weighted with sorrow instead of burning desire. I've spent 4 years trying to push you away to protect you, Clara. I avoided every family function I knew you'd attend, turned down every dinner invitation your mother sent my way, told myself my attraction to you was a fleeting midlife distraction I'd outgrow. None of it worked. I can't stay away from you any longer. I lifted my head to meet his eyes, hot tears spilling down my cheeks without warning. What are we supposed to do? Hide in closets every time Margot drops by unexpectedly? Sneak around town like criminals for the rest of our lives? Mom will never forgive us if she finds out we've fallen for each other behind her back. She sees you as her brother. Elias's jaw tightened. I've already begun drawing up legal documents to file for a full divorce from Margot. Her affairs are well documented, I've hired my own team of investigators to capture photographic proof of her countless Parisian flings. The prenuptial agreement's loopholes will let me walk away with most of my holdings if I can prove she's the one repeatedly breaking our marital contract. Once the divorce finalizes, there's no legal barrier between us anymore. And my mother? I whispered. She'll feel betrayed beyond repair. You're her most trusted friend, and I'm her only daughter. She'll think I threw away all her hard work raising me just to chase a forbidden older man, who's still married to another woman. Give her time to understand. Elias rested his forehead lightly against mine, his warm breath fanning over my damp cheeks. She knows how miserable Margot makes me. She's seen the way I light up whenever you walk into a room, even if she's never put the pieces together yet. When she realizes my marriage was dead long before I ever developed feelings for you, she'll eventually come to accept we're meant to be together. A loud vibration cut through the quiet, my mother's name flashing across my phone screen. I froze, staring at the incoming call notification. Certain Mom was blowing up my line to demand where I'd run off 2 hours earlier after our explosive backyard argument. Chapter 3. I swiped the reject button instantly, shoving the phone deep into my crossbody bag to avoid further interruptions. Guilt gnawed at my insides thinking about how worried my mother must be, how she'd likely stayed up pacing the living room waiting for me to return home safely. Elias noticed the panicked flicker across my face. Your mom's calling you. I nodded, swallowing hard. I stormed out without a single text to explain where I was going. She's probably convinced I've gotten hurt driving through the city rain. You need to head back to her house soon, before she calls the police to file a missing person report. He stepped back, creating a small gap between our bodies, a quiet surrender to the countless rules and responsibilities weighing down on both of us. But promise me you won't shut me out completely once you're home. Sneak your phone under your covers tonight, text me when everyone's asleep. I need to know I haven't imagined this connection between us. I hesitated, torn between the safety of returning to my predictable, drama-free family life, and the intoxicating pull of Elias's forbidden affection. Logically, I knew walking out of this penthouse and cutting all contact with him was the only sensible choice. Every rational voice in my head screamed that a romance between a 24-year-old girl and her mother's 38-year-old married best friend could only end in ruin. But my heart refused to listen to reason after 4 years of silent, unrequited longing finally reciprocated. I'll text you tonight, I conceded quietly. But we have to be careful. If Margot's private eyes track our phone communications, we'll have irrefutable evidence of our secret for her to weaponize against us. Elias pulled a small, brand new burner phone out of his suit jacket pocket, pressing the slim black device into my palm. No linked accounts, no shared contacts, untraceable cell service. We only message each other on this from now on. Leave your regular personal phone at home every time we plan to meet privately. Margot's investigators can't trace this line back to either of our legal identities. I tucked the burner into the hidden inner pocket of my jacket, fingers brushing against the smooth plastic surface, a tangible symbol of our dangerous, hidden bond. How often can we see each other without drawing suspicion? Every family event feels like Margot's watching our every interaction now. I own a remote mountain cabin 3 hours north of the city, no neighbors within a 5-mile radius, no security cameras, no traffic cameras leading up to the driveway. Margot has never known about the property. I purchased it years ago as a private escape from our toxic city marriage. We can drive up there on weekends when your mother's busy with her charity galas and Margot flies overseas to her Parisian social circle. No risk of anyone spotting us together there. A flicker of fragile hope sparked inside my chest at the mention of a secluded space where we wouldn't have to duck behind closets or pretend to be casual acquaintances. For a few short days at the cabin, we could drop all our masks, stop hiding the love we'd both spent years suppressing. Before I could respond, My personal phone vibrated violently again inside my bag, Mom's name popping up once more on the screen. This time, I couldn't ignore the call any longer. Staying away any longer would only amplify her fear and suspicion. I really have to go, I murmured, stepping past Elias toward the penthouse entryway. He followed me down the hallway to the front door, catching my wrist gently before I could twist the doorknob open. Wait. Before you leave, I need you to know I'm not just chasing a fleeting thrill with you. This isn't some midlife distraction I'll abandon once the novelty wears off. I want a future with you, Clara. A real life, without hidden closets and secret burner phones and vengeful spouses breathing down our necks. I stared up into his hazel eyes, every wall I'd built around my heart crumbling completely. All the years of lonely daydreams, every quiet moment I'd spent staring at him from across crowded dinner tables, every sleepless night replaying his faint smiles directed my way, none of it compared to hearing him openly declare he wanted a permanent life together with me. I leaned forward on impulse, pressing a soft, tentative kiss against his jawline, the brief contact sending a wave of heat surging through my entire body. I want that future too. No matter how many obstacles stand in our way. Elias's grip on my wrist tightened slightly, his gaze darkening with renewed longing, but he forced himself to release me, stepping back to let me exit the penthouse before we lost our self-control and risked getting caught if Margot circled back unexpectedly. Drive safely through the rain. Text me the second you lock your bedroom door at your mom's house tonight. I nodded, slipping out the front door and rushing down the elevator stairwell to the underground parking garage, my mind spinning with a chaotic mixture of terror, thrill, and quiet optimism about the unknown path stretching out ahead of us. The drive back to my mother's lakeside estate blurred past rain-streaked car windows. I clutched the unmarked burner phone tightly in one hand, replaying Elias's confessions over and over inside my head. By the time I pulled into the long gravel driveway leading to our large colonial-style home, midnight had already fallen, all the house lights still blazing bright, proof Mom had stayed awake waiting for my return. I pushed open the front door quietly, fully prepared for a screaming lecture about recklessness and disrespect, but instead found my mother sitting alone on the living room sofa, her eyes red-rimmed from crying, an empty mug of cold tea sitting untouched on the wooden coffee table beside her. Where were you? Her voice came out weak and broken instead of furious, draining all the prepared excuses I'd rehearsed in the car. I went for a long drive to clear my head after our fight earlier. I kept the lie vague, avoiding any mention of Elias or his penthouse to spare her immediate heartbreak. I didn't realize how late it got. I'm so sorry I made you worry sick. Mom stood from the sofa and crossed the room to pull me into a shaky, tight hug. I thought something terrible had happened to you on those wet city highways. I called Elias an hour ago to ask if he'd seen you out driving anywhere. He said he hadn't spotted your car around town tonight. My blood ran cold instantly. Elias had lied to my mother to cover my secret visit to his apartment, a small deception that weighed heavy on my conscience. If Mom ever found out he'd hidden my whereabouts from her, her decades-long trust in him would shatter irreparably. I'm sorry I worried you, I repeated, burying my face into her shoulder to hide the guilty flush spreading across my cheeks. I'm heading straight up to my bedroom to rest now. I'll explain everything properly tomorrow morning once we're both calm. She pulled back, brushing a strand of hair from my forehead, her gaze soft with maternal concern. Don't shut yourself away alone all night if you need to talk about whatever upset you earlier. I hate that our silly argument sent you racing out into the dark by yourself. I forced a faint, reassuring smile before turning to climb the wide wooden staircase leading to my second-floor bedroom, the hidden burner phone heavy in my jacket pocket the entire way up. Once I locked my bedroom door behind me and drew the blackout curtains across the windows, I pulled the unmarked device out and typed a short, encrypted text to Elias, the first of hundreds of secret messages we would exchange in the months ahead. Chapter 4. The next week unfolded in a delicate, exhausting dance of hidden glances, secret texts, and constant paranoia about Margot's newly hired private investigators. Elias sent daily updates via the burner phone about his divorce legal team's progress, sharing photographic evidence his detectives had captured of Margot's multiple Parisian affairs, blurry but irrefutable snapshots of her leaving five-star hotel rooms with different male companions every night she claimed to be attending charity summits. Meanwhile, I navigated tense daily interactions with my mother, who repeatedly brought up Elias in casual household conversation, completely oblivious to the forbidden romance blooming between her best friend and her only daughter. She continued inviting him over for weekly Sunday brunches, forcing us to sit across the dining table from each other under her watchful gaze, every lingering eye contact between us fraught with suppressed longing and the constant fear we'd accidentally give our secret away with a misplaced smile or subtle touch. Margot's presence loomed like a dark storm cloud over every social event our families attended together. At a downtown art charity gala the following Saturday night, she positioned herself directly between Elias and me the entire evening, her cold, cutting remarks aimed at me non-stop whenever Elias stepped away to greet business partners. "Still clinging to my husband every chance you get, little girl," Margot purred, swirling a glass of expensive red wine between her manicured fingers, as Elias chatted with a group of investors across the ballroom floor. "I've read the private detective's preliminary reports. They've captured footage of your sports car entering his underground parking garage late last week. I have all the leverage I need to destroy your entire family's reputation, if you don't back off permanently." My hands tightened around the stem of my champagne flute, my pulse spiking with anxiety. Nothing inappropriate happened between Elias and me that night. I only dropped off legal paperwork his client entrusted to my mother's firm. Margot let out a bitter, mocking laugh, tilting her chin up with icy arrogance. "Save the flimsy excuses for the tabloid reporters I've already contacted. One single leaked story detailing your tawdry little crush on a married 38-year-old man will turn you into the laughingstock of every high society circle in this country. Your mother's charity foundation will lose millions in donor funding overnight, all because you can't control your juvenile infatuation." Before I could fire back a retort, Elias returned to our side of the ballroom, slipping one hand casually around Margot's waist in a performative display of marital affection designed for the dozens of wealthy onlookers surrounding us. His gaze flicked to mine for a split second, silent worry hidden deep in his hazel irises, before he directed a polite, hollow smile toward his wife. "Darling, stop harassing Clara with unfounded accusations. She's only here accompanying her mother for the auction fundraiser tonight." His tone carried a quiet warning only Margot would pick up on, a subtle reminder he held damning photographic proof of her own extramarital flings in his lawyer's files. Margot's jaw tightened with suppressed rage, but she dropped the hostile line of questioning for the sake of maintaining their polished public marriage facade in front of the gala's elite guests. "Of course, Elias. I merely struck up a casual conversation with the young lady to welcome her to tonight's event." She turned on her heel and stormed off toward the open bar, leaving Elias and me alone for a precious few unmonitored seconds. He leaned in close enough for his quiet voice to reach only my ears, his gaze fixed firmly on the marble ballroom floor to avoid drawing curious onlookers' attention. "Her investigators have footage of your car at the penthouse, but no visual proof of us interacting inside the building yet. My legal team says the photos of her Parisian affairs outweigh her weak circumstantial evidence against us if she tries to file a scandalous divorce motion first. I'm terrified she'll leak the story to the press before your divorce paperwork finishes processing," I whispered back, keeping my lips pressed tight around the rim of my champagne glass to muffle my words. Mom's nonprofit relies entirely on wealthy donors who'll pull all funding the second a gossip article links her daughter to a married family friend. Elias's eyes softened with quiet sympathy. "I won't let her destroy your mother's life's work to get revenge on me. My lawyers have pre-written cease and desist letters ready to send to every tabloid editor Margot contacts, threatening massive defamation lawsuits if they publish any fabricated or partially true stories about us before the divorce concludes." A nearby event photographer wandered past our spot on the ballroom floor, camera lens sweeping across the crowd, forcing us to step apart abruptly and revert to distant, polite acquaintances, to avoid being captured in any suspicious close-up shots together. The moment the photographer moved on to other gala attendees, Elias subtly slipped a folded paper note into the palm of my hand as he pretended to hand me a small chocolate truffle from a passing catering tray. I curled the note closed in my fist, hiding it inside the clutch purse slung over my arm, until I could sneak away to the women's restroom to read its contents privately. Inside the locked bathroom stall, I unfolded the thin white sheet of paper, Elias's neat, sharp handwriting scrawled across the surface. Cabin access, code 7419. I'll leave the mountain house key hidden under the third stone, by the front porch tomorrow morning. Meet me there Friday evening once your mother leaves for her 3-day charity retreat out of town. Margot flies to Paris Thursday night, no risk of interruption for the whole weekend. A surge of quiet relief washed over me reading the words on the page. 3 full uninterrupted days hidden away in the remote mountain cabin, far from Margot's surveillance, far from my mother's watchful eyes, far from every judgmental socialite lurking in the city's elite ballrooms. For 72 whole hours, Elias and I wouldn't have to hide our love behind lies and fake formalities. I crumpled the note into a tiny ball, and flushed it down the bathroom toilet, to eliminate any incriminating physical evidence Margot's private eyes might find if they rummaged through my belongings later that night. When I exited the stall and washed my hands at the marble sink, I caught my own reflection in the large wall mirror, my cheeks flushed with a mix of nervous excitement and lingering anxiety about the endless threats hanging over our heads. By the time the gala's silent auction concluded and Mom signaled it was time to drive back to the lakeside estate, I'd barely exchanged more than a handful of secret glances with Elias all night. As we climbed into our family's SUV to leave the venue, I glanced back over my shoulder through the rear window, catching sight of Elias standing alone on the ballroom's front steps, his gaze locked directly on our departing vehicle until we rounded the corner out of sight. That night, lying awake in my bedroom long after my mother had fallen asleep downstairs, I typed a lengthy encrypted text on the burner phone to Elias, spilling all my tangled fears and fragile hope for our upcoming weekend getaway at the mountain cabin. His reply arrived 20 minutes later, short but steadying. No matter what Margot throws at us next weekend, I'll keep you safe. This is the first chance we've ever had to stop hiding who we truly are to each other. Chapter 5. Friday afternoon arrived faster than I'd anticipated. Mom packed her rolling suitcase bright and early to depart for her 3-day rural charity retreat, pressing a quick, affectionate kiss to my forehead before climbing into her volunteer group's shared van to drive 2 hours out of the city. Before she pulled away from the driveway, she waved over at Elias's house across the lake. He'd texted her earlier to say he planned to stop by our estate Saturday morning to drop off a box of donated auction items for her foundation. My stomach twisted with guilt knowing his planned Saturday visit was merely a cover story to explain any brief sightings of his vehicle near our lakeside property, if Margot's investigators tracked his movements to the mountain region that weekend. Once Mom's van vanished down the long gravel driveway, I grabbed a small weekend duffel bag, stuffed minimal clothing and toiletries inside, and slipped the hidden burner phone into my jacket pocket before heading out to my sports car. The 3-hour drive north to Elias's mountain cabin wound through winding tree-lined highways, heavy pine trees blocking out most cell service halfway through the route, cutting off constant contact with the burner phone for most of the trip. By the time I turned onto the narrow unmarked dirt driveway leading to the isolated cabin, golden late afternoon sunlight filtered through evergreen branches, casting soft streaks of light across the quiet wooden property tucked between steep forested hills. I parked my car beside a small storage shed off to the side of the main house, then followed Elias's written instructions to locate the spare cabin key tucked beneath the smooth gray third stone lining the front porch steps. I unlocked the heavy oak front door and stepped inside the spacious, minimalist cabin, the air filled with the familiar cedar scent of Elias's cologne lingering on the leather sofas, and will throw blankets scattered across the living room furniture. Floor-to-ceiling windows lined the back wall of the great room, overlooking a quiet private lake surrounded by untouched woodland, no neighboring houses visible for miles in every direction. I set my duffel bag down beside the stone fireplace and wandered through the open-concept kitchen, running my fingers across polished wooden countertops, imagining what it would be like to live in a space like this with Elias permanently once his divorce finalized. A distant car engine rumbled up the dirt driveway 40 minutes after I arrived. I rushed to the front window to watch Elias's black luxury SUV pull to a stop beside my parked sports car, my heart racing with giddy anticipation, after weeks of stolen, hurried interactions in crowded public spaces. He climbed out of the vehicle carrying a paper grocery bag full of wine and fresh produce, locking his car behind him before walking up the porch steps to unlock the front door and step inside. No fake formalities, no forced distant smiles, no fear of hidden cameras or lurking private eyes hanging over us in this secluded space. Elias dropped the grocery bag onto the kitchen counter the second the door clicked shut behind him, crossing the room in quick strides to pull me tight against his chest, his arms wrapping firmly around my waist as he buried his face in the crook of my neck. "I've been counting down every hour since I left you at the charity gala last Saturday night," he murmured against my skin, his voice thick with suppressed longing he'd been forced to hide in public for weeks on end. "No Margot, no gossip reporters, no watching our every word around your mother here. Just us, completely alone for 3 whole days." I wrapped both arms around his broad shoulders, sinking into the comfort of his embrace, all the constant stress and paranoia weighing on my shoulders melting away in that single unhurried touch. I kept replaying your note in my head all week, terrified Margot would find a way to block this weekend getaway before Friday rolled around. Elias pulled back slightly to cup both sides of my face between his palms, his hazel eyes soft and unguarded without the cold public mask he wore around strangers, and his vengeful wife. Margot boarded her flight to Paris yesterday afternoon, her entire schedule logged with international flight tracking services my lawyers monitor. "She can't interfere with us here, not for 72 hours. He leaned down and pressed a slow, tender kiss to my lips, the first real, unrushed kiss we'd shared since the brief brush against his jaw back at his penthouse weeks earlier. Every suppressed feeling we'd both buried for 4 years crashed over me in that single moment, the weight of all our hidden secrets, all our stolen glances, all our sleepless nights yearning for each other vanishing entirely inside the quiet mountain cabin. We spent the rest of the golden afternoon unpacking the groceries he'd brought, cooking a simple pasta dinner side by side at the kitchen counter, talking endlessly about everything we'd been forced to hide from the outside world for years. Elias detailed the full extent of Margot's cruelty throughout their decade-long arranged marriage. How she'd refused to speak to him for months on end over minor social disagreements. How she drained hundreds of thousands of his personal funds on luxury shopping sprees without a second thought. How she deliberately sabotaged every business partnership he tried to build if it didn't benefit her family's corporate holdings. I opened up about my own lonely childhood, after my father passed away unexpectedly when I was 18, explaining how my mother's overprotective nature had left me craving someone who saw me as an adult woman rather than a fragile child to shelter. I admitted how every passing year watching Elias treat me with quiet kindness had slowly turned a harmless youthful admiration into an all-consuming love I couldn't outrun no matter how hard I tried to distance myself. As dusk fell over the private lake outside the cabin windows, we carried 2 glasses of red wine out onto the wooden back deck, sitting side by side on a weathered outdoor bench overlooking the calm dark water. The air turned crisp with mountain night chill, Elias sliding a thick wool blanket over both our shoulders to wrap us together against the breeze. "Do you truly think my mother will ever forgive us once the divorce is official?" I asked quietly, staring out across the still lake surface, a flicker of lingering guilt tugging at my chest even in our safe, isolated escape. "She's known you longer than she's known my late father. Losing her closest friend, because of our forbidden romance, will devastate her beyond repair." Elias laced his fingers through mine, squeezing my hand gently in reassurance. Your mother's biggest priority has always been your happiness, even if she can't see that right now. Once she witnesses how miserable my marriage to Margot always was, once she realizes we didn't manufacture these feelings overnight out of childish recklessness, she'll slowly come to accept that we belong together. It won't happen overnight, but I refuse to believe she'll disown her only daughter permanently over a love we couldn't control. A faint buzz cut through the quiet mountain air, the hidden burner phone tucked inside my duffel bag vibrating faintly inside the cabin living room. I stood to retrieve the device, assuming it would be a routine update text from Elias's divorce lawyer. Instead, the unknown number displayed across the screen sent a cold wave of terror straight down my spine. The message read, "I tracked Elias's SUV to the mountain highway 2 hours ago. I know exactly which remote cabin you two are hiding in this weekend. I'm 30 minutes away with a full camera crew ready to capture every secret moment between the married man and his young mistress. No cease and desist letters will stop me from leaking these photos to every major tabloid tomorrow morning." Margot. Chapter 6. I froze mid-step back toward the deck, the burner phone shaking violently in my grasp as I reread Margot's threatening text over and over, the words blurring in front of my eyes from panic. Elias noticed my rigid posture and wide, terrified eyes instantly, standing quickly from the wooden bench to cross the cabin deck and reach my side. "What's wrong?" He grabbed the unmarked device from my trembling hands, scanning the threatening message Margot had sent us, his own face hardening with icy rage as he processed every cruel line of her blackmail. "She lied about flying to Paris yesterday. She booked a short regional domestic flight instead of an international one, tricking my legal team's flight trackers into believing she'd left the country. She's been following my vehicle's GPS signal all the way up the mountain highway. How did she even find out about this cabin?" I whispered, my throat tight with dread. "You said you never told her this property existed, that you purchased it completely separate from your shared marital assets." Elias's jaw clenched tight with frustration. One of my disgruntled former financial assistants leaked confidential property records to her private investigators last month for a large cash payout. I fired the man 2 weeks ago, but never realized he'd handed over the cabin's location coordinates alongside the other files he stole from my office safe. A distant pair of bright headlights cut through the dark tree line at the end of the dirt driveway, growing brighter by the second as Margot's vehicle accelerated toward the cabin's front porch. Panic surged through my veins. If she pulled up and caught us together alone inside the secluded weekend home, her camera crew would capture irrefutable photographic proof of our secret affair, ammunition powerful enough to destroy both our lives permanently before Elias's divorce paperwork finalized. "We need to hide somewhere she won't find us before she steps foot on the property," Elias said, grabbing my wrist and tugging me back inside the cabin, slamming the glass sliding deck door shut and twisting the deadbolt lock tight behind us. "There's an underground storm cellar beneath the kitchen pantry, built into the foundation when the cabin was constructed decades ago. The door blends perfectly into the wooden shelving units. She'll never spot it even if she tears the whole house apart searching for us." I didn't waste a single second arguing or hesitating. I followed Elias quickly through the kitchen, as the loud crunch of tires on gravel echoed outside the front windows, Margot's luxury SUV pulling to a harsh stop directly on the front porch stone steps. Elias yanked open a tall wooden pantry cabinet in the far corner of the kitchen, sliding a heavy metal latch aside to reveal a narrow hidden metal door set into the concrete basement floor beneath the shelving racks. "Climb down the ladder first. I'll lock the cellar hatch behind us once I join you," he instructed in a hushed, urgent whisper, helping me step carefully onto the rickety metal ladder leading into the dark underground storage space. I descended rapidly into the cool, damp cellar air, Elias closing the pantry cabinet door behind himself and climbing down the ladder seconds later, sliding the heavy metal hatch shut and twisting a rusted padlock through the handle to seal us safely out of sight from Margot's search. The underground storm cellar was barely larger than a standard walk-in closet, lined with stacked plastic storage bins full of old winter firewood and unused camping gear. Only a tiny frosted ventilation window high up on one wall letting in a faint sliver of evening mountain moonlight. We huddled together on a folded wool mat spread across the concrete floor, our shoulders pressed tight against each other as we listened to Margot's loud, furious footsteps stomp across the cabin's wooden floorboards overhead. Elias, I know you're hiding somewhere inside this house with that little gold digger Clara. Her shrill, furious voice carried clearly down through the thin floorboards separating the cellar from the main living space above us. Come out right now, and I'll only leak a small handful of your incriminating photos to one magazine. If I'm forced to hunt you down room by room, every tabloid in North America and Europe will run front-page headlines about your sordid weekend tryst with a girl young enough to be your daughter. We heard the sound of drawers being violently ripped open in the master bedroom overhead, followed by the crash of a ceramic decorative vase, shattering against the hardwood floor as Margot tore through every room of the cabin searching for our hiding spot. She stormed through the guest bedroom, the great room, the back deck, and the upstairs loft space one after another, her enraged shouts echoing non-stop through the house's thin structural walls. They're not upstairs, not on the deck, not in any of the bedroom closets. Margot snapped to someone she'd brought along with her, one of her private investigative camera operators, I realized with a sinking heart. Check every kitchen cabinet and storage unit thoroughly. They must be hiding somewhere in the pantry or under the floorboards. Heavy footsteps thundered directly above our concealed storm cellar hatch, Margot's manicured nails scraping hard against the wooden pantry shelving racks, as she ripped every canned food container and storage bin off the shelves one by one, searching for any hidden access point beneath the cabinetry. Elias wrapped one protective arm firmly around my trembling shoulders, pressing a silent, reassuring kiss to the top of my head to calm my hyperventilating panic as we listened to her inches away from our locked hiding spot. She'll never find the padlocked cellar hatch behind the heavy shelving unit, he mouthed silently against my ear, careful not to make a single audible sound that would carry up through the floorboards to Margot's ears. The metal locks rusted shut tight. Even if she spots the door, she won't have the key to pry it open before she grows tired of tearing the cabin apart searching for us. Minutes dragged by like hours trapped underground, Margot's destructive rampage continuing overhead as she tossed kitchen cookware, blankets, and decorative throw pillows across every room of the cabin in her desperate hunt for photographic evidence of our secret weekend getaway. Eventually, her furious shouting faded, the sound of her boots stomping back across the front porch reaching our ears as she stormed outside to speak with her camera crew in the driveway. The two of them must have spotted our vehicles pulling up and fled into the surrounding woods before I could lock the property gates. Margot huffed loudly outside the cabin front door. Spread out into the forest trails with your cameras and flashlights. Search every tree line and hiking path within a mile radius of the cabin. They can't have gotten far on foot into the mountain darkness. We listened to the camera crew's multiple pairs of boots crunch off into the pine forest surrounding the cabin, Margot remaining on the front porch pacing back and forth, muttering bitter threats under her breath, as she waited for her investigators to comb the woodland trails for our fleeing silhouettes. Elias waited a full 20 minutes, after all the footsteps faded into the distant trees, before carefully unlocking the rusted padlock and lifting the heavy metal cellar hatch open a tiny crack to listen for any lingering movement overhead. It's quiet upstairs now, he whispered, climbing slowly back up the metal ladder and extending a hand down to help me ascend out of the cramped underground hiding space. She sent all her camera operators into the woods searching for us. We've got a narrow window of time to slip out the back deck door and drive my SUV down a separate unmarked forest access road hidden behind the storage shed before she circles back to check the cabin again. I climbed the ladder shakily, my legs stiff and numb from huddled motionlessness inside the cold storm cellar, following Elias quickly through the wrecked kitchen toward the glass backsliding doors. Every surface of the cabin was trashed beyond recognition. Broken ceramic shards littered the hardwood floors, all cabinet drawers hung wide open, blankets and clothing strewn across every piece of furniture, proof of Margot's unhinged rage at discovering we'd evaded her surveillance trap. Elias grabbed the burner phone I'd abandoned on the kitchen counter earlier, shoving it into his jacket pocket alongside the cabin keys, as we slipped silently out onto the dark wooden back deck, quietly closing the glass door behind us to avoid drawing Margot's attention back to the cabin. We sprinted hand in hand across the shadowed backyard lawn toward the small storage shed tucked beside the main driveway, where a narrow overgrown dirt service road branched off the main cabin driveway hidden behind thick pine shrubbery. "Climb into the passenger seat and duck down below the window line as we drive," Elias instructed as we reached his black SUV, unlocking the doors quickly and ushering me inside the vehicle. If Margot's lingering on the front porch spots our vehicle pulling out the back service road, she'll immediately send her camera crew sprinting after us into the woods. I slid down low in the passenger seat, my head hidden beneath the dashboard as Elias started the SUV's engine and eased silently down the overgrown forest access road, the vehicle's headlights switched off completely to avoid shining light through the tree line toward the cabin's front porch, where Margot paced restlessly. We drove for nearly an hour along winding unmarked mountain service roads, only flicking the headlights back on once we'd put several miles of thick woodland between ourselves and the trashed cabin property Margot continued guarding with her investigative team. Once we reached a tiny remote mountain gas station with a 24-hour convenience store, Elias pulled the SUV into a far empty parking spot hidden behind a row of large evergreen trees, turning off the engine completely before turning to face me in the dim dashboard glow. My hand still shook violently from the terror of hiding in the locked storm cellar listening to Margot destroy our safe weekend escape spot. "She won't stop hunting us now," I whispered, hot frustrated tears spilling down my cheeks despite Elias's steady presence beside me. "She's willing to chase us into remote mountain forests, with a full camera crew, just to fabricate tabloid scandal photos. Even once your divorce paperwork goes through, she'll spend years harassing both of us out of spite." Elias reached over the center console to wipe my streaming tears away with his thumb, his expression heavy with exhausted guilt. "I never should have dragged you into this messy, vengeful marital war with Margot. I thought I could shield you from all her cruel retaliatory tactics, but I drastically underestimated how far she's willing to go to ruin anyone I care about." "It's not your fault," I sniffled, leaning my head against his shoulder inside the car's quiet passenger cabin. "I chose to fall for you 4 years ago, knowing full well you were trapped in a loveless, toxic marriage. I knew Margot would fight dirty to cling to her social status and family fortune if our secret ever surfaced. I just never imagined she'd track us all the way to a hidden mountain cabin to stage a tabloid ambush." Elias pulled the burner phone out of his jacket pocket, scrolling through Margot's threatening text message again with a cold, determined glint in his eyes. "My lawyers will file an emergency restraining order against her first thing Monday morning, citing stalking, harassment, and unlawful surveillance of private property. The footage her camera crew captured in the woods tonight will be inadmissible in any divorce court proceeding. She obtained it through illegal trespassing on my privately owned land without prior consent." He paused, squeezing my hand tight between his own inside the dark car. "This weekend getaway's ruined, but I refuse to let Margot scare us apart permanently. We'll book a private oceanfront villa overseas next month once her temporary flight ban for the restraining order processes, somewhere she can't track our travel records, or hire local private investigators to stalk us." Chapter 7. We spent the rest of the night parked at the isolated mountain gas station, too afraid to drive back down the main highway leading to the cabin in case Margot's camera crew lingered on the surrounding forest roads waiting to capture our vehicle on camera. Elias purchased 2 hot coffees and packaged sandwiches from the 24-hour convenience store to calm our frayed nerves, the small neon convenience store sign casting faint pink light through the car windows as we talked through every contingency Margot could possibly throw at us in the weeks ahead. By the time faint grey dawn light seeped over the mountain treetops, Elias deemed the surrounding forest roads clear of Margot's investigative team, starting the SUV's engine to begin the long 3-hour drive back toward the city. We agreed to split our vehicles halfway down the mountain highway to avoid being spotted traveling together by any lingering surveillance cameras Margot had planted along the main route. He would take the northern interstate loop back to his downtown penthouse, while I'd follow the southern county highway leading to my mother's lakeside estate. Before we separated at a quiet highway rest stop, Elias handed me a brand new secondary burner phone as a backup communication device, explaining Margot could potentially trace the first unmarked line she'd texted threats to if her investigators dug deep enough into untraceable cell service records. Keep this second device hidden somewhere separate from the first one at all times, like the lining of your suitcase, or a locked jewelry box in your bedroom dresser, he warned, pressing the slim black phone into my palm. If the primary burner ever receives threatening messages from Margot again, switch all our conversations over to this backup line immediately to cut off any tracking attempts. We exchanged one quick, fleeting kiss beside the rest stop's empty picnic tables before climbing back into our separate vehicles, driving off in opposite directions to create the illusion we'd never spent the weekend together at the trashed mountain cabin. The drive back to my mother's lakeside estate felt empty and lonely without Elias beside me in the passenger seat, every winding highway stretch reminding me of our shattered 3-day escape plan ruined by Margot's vengeful ambush. When I pulled into the gravel driveway leading to our home mid-morning, Mom's charity retreat van hadn't returned yet. She wouldn't arrive back until late Sunday evening, leaving me a full day alone inside the quiet house to process the terrifying weekend events. I dragged my duffel bag upstairs to my bedroom, stashing both burner phones deep inside the locked bottom drawer of my wooden dresser beneath piles of old sweaters to hide them from any accidental discovery. I collapsed onto my bedroom bed fully clothed, staring blankly up at the ceiling replaying every frightening moment trapped inside the underground storm cellar listening to Margot destroy the cabin overhead. For months I'd clung to the quiet hope Elias's divorce would resolve all our endless conflicts with his vengeful wife, but after witnessing how far Margot was willing to stalk and harass us to manufacture scandalous tabloid material, I began to question if we'd ever truly escape her retaliation permanently. A notification pinged the primary burner phone hidden in my dresser hours later, Elias's encrypted message lighting up the small screen. My legal team filed emergency restraining order paperwork against Margot first thing this morning. The judge will hold a preliminary hearing Tuesday to rule on temporary stalking protections, barring her from contacting either of us, or trespassing on any property I own, including the mountain cabin. Her private investigative firm's contract has been flagged for illegal surveillance violations. The lead detective she hired faces misdemeanor criminal charges for trespassing last night. A small flicker of cautious relief lifted my heavy spirits reading the update. Margot's unhinged ambush at the cabin had backfired legally, giving Elias's lawyers irrefutable evidence of her stalking and unlawful surveillance to present in both the restraining order hearing and his upcoming divorce trial. If the judge granted the temporary protective order Tuesday, Margot would face immediate arrest if she attempted to contact, follow, or photograph either of us again for the next 6 months. I typed a careful encrypted reply back to Elias via the primary burner. I'm terrified she'll ignore the restraining order and continue hunting us regardless of legal consequences. She's proven she doesn't care about breaking laws to ruin our reputations for revenge. His response arrived minutes later. The court will issue a no-contact violation warrant on the spot if she disobeys the judge's protective order terms. She risks criminal jail time and permanent loss of her family's corporate board seats if she continues stalking us after Tuesday's ruling. Her wealthy relatives won't tolerate her reckless illegal behavior tarnishing their multi-billion-dollar business empire. She'll be forced to comply with the court's restrictions to avoid losing all her inherited power and wealth. I set the burner phone back inside the locked dresser drawer and wandered downstairs to fix a light lunch in the empty kitchen, my mind still tangled with anxiety about the upcoming Tuesday court hearing and Margot's unpredictable retaliatory tactics. As I heated soup on the stovetop, a loud knock echoed through the front entryway, sending a fresh jolt of panic through my chest. My first instinct was Margot showing up at the lakeside estate unannounced to confront me while Mom remained away at her charity retreat. I crept cautiously over to the front window, pulling back the sheer white curtain a tiny sliver to peer out at the driveway, only relaxing when I spotted Elias's lawyer standing alone on the front porch holding a thick stack of legal folders bound with black ribbon. I unlocked the front door and stepped outside onto the porch to greet him, confused why he traveled all the way out to the lake house to deliver paperwork in person rather than email the digital files to Elias's penthouse. "Miss Bennett, I'm sorry to drop by unannounced on a weekend," the middle-aged attorney shook my hand politely, handing over the heavy stack of legal documents. "Elias instructed me to deliver copies of the restraining order petition and all supporting evidence collected against Margot to your residence for your personal records before Tuesday's preliminary hearing. This folder contains photographic proof of her Parisian affairs, GPS tracking logs documenting her drive to the mountain cabin Friday night, and written witness statements from the gas station clerk who observed her camera crew searching the woodland trails surrounding the property." I took the thick stack of papers from his grasp, my fingers brushing the typed witness statements on top of the folder. "Will Margot's legal representation attempt to fight the restraining order aggressively during the hearing?" I asked the attorney, worried she'd hire high-powered defense lawyers to dismiss all the stalking evidence Elias's team had gathered. "Her counsel will argue the surveillance and cabin visit constituted legitimate marital investigation for the divorce proceedings," the lawyer explained flatly. "But the judge overseeing this family court division has issued multiple permanent restraining orders against wealthy stalking defendants in high society divorce cases previously. The illegal trespassing and amateur tabloid ambush evidence will weigh heavily in your favor during Tuesday's ruling. I'm confident the temporary protective order will be granted without pushback." After the attorney departed back to the city, I carried the entire stack of legal paperwork upstairs to my bedroom, locking it inside the same dresser drawer as the 2 hidden burner phones to keep all sensitive evidence concealed from Mom's eventual return Sunday evening. The rest of the day passed in quiet, restless waiting as I alternated between scrolling through encrypted texts with Elias and rereading the stacks of legal documentation outlining every count of Margot's stalking and unlawful surveillance against us. Late Sunday afternoon, Mom's charity retreat van pulled back into the gravel driveway, her car full of donated auction supplies stacked in the back seats. I rushed outside to help her unload the boxes of donated clothing and art pieces for her nonprofit foundation, forcing a calm, unconcerned smile across my face to hide the weekend's terrifying ordeal, an upcoming court hearing weighing heavy on my mind. "Did you stay home alone peacefully while I was gone?" Mom asked as we carried heavy cardboard boxes inside the house together, completely oblivious to the stalking threat Margot had launched against Elias and me over the past 48 hours. I texted Elias Saturday morning as planned to ask if he'd swing by with auction donations, but he said unexpected last-minute corporate meetings pulled him away from the lake house for the whole weekend. My heart twinged with fresh guilt hearing Elias's fabricated excuse to cover our abandoned mountain cabin getaway. Every small lie we told to conceal our forbidden romance piled higher between me and the mother who trusted both of us unconditionally. "He's been swamped with merger negotiations lately from what I've heard," I replied neutrally, avoiding any further detailed conversation about Elias to prevent slipping up and revealing our secret weekend together. That night after Mom retired to her bedroom downstairs, I pulled the primary burner phone out of the locked dresser drawer to send Elias a late-night text updating him on her safe return from the retreat, careful to delete every sent and received message immediately after reading to eliminate any traceable digital history stored on the unmarked device. His reply arrived shortly before midnight, soft and reassuring despite all the looming legal conflict with Margot, 2 more days until the restraining order hearing. "Once the judge bars her from contacting us, we'll finally catch a break from her endless harassment, and we can start planning our overseas villa getaway without constant surveillance hanging over our heads." Chapter 8. Tuesday morning arrived faster than I was prepared for. I excused myself to Mom under the pretense of an important work internship meeting downtown, driving separately to the family courthouse, where Elias and his legal team planned to present all stalking evidence against Margot for the preliminary restraining order hearing. I parked my sports car in a distant side lot of the courthouse parking garage to avoid any chance of Margot or her defense attorneys spotting my vehicle and drawing unnecessary public attention to my involvement in the case. Inside the quiet marble courtroom, Elias sat beside his two lawyers at the plaintiff's table, crisp-tailored suit sharp against the polished wooden bench. Margot occupied the opposite defendant table flanked by three expensive corporate defense attorneys, her expression cold and unrepentant as she glanced over at Elias and me with unmasked venom in her eyes the second I took a seat in the back row of spectator seating. The judge called the hearing to order within 10 minutes of the court's opening time, Elias's lead attorney standing to present every piece of supporting evidence one by one to the bench. GPS records, proving Margot tracked Elias's SUV to the remote mountain cabin. Written statements from the gas station clerk, who witnessed her camera crew combing the surrounding forest. High-resolution photos documenting her repeated extramarital affairs in Paris, and text screenshots of the threatening blackmail messages she'd sent to our hidden burner phone Friday night. Margot's defense team fought hard to discredit every piece of evidence their client had manufactured the weekend ambush, arguing all surveillance activity fell under standard marital discovery allowed during divorce litigation. They claimed her trip to the cabin constituted a reasonable attempt to verify rumors of Elias's infidelity rather than criminal stalking, labeling our mountain getaway a pre-planned adulterous tryst designed to humiliate their wealthy client publicly. The judge listened silently through over an hour of back-and-forth legal argument, occasionally pausing to flip through the stacks of photographic and digital evidence laid out across his bench. When both sides finished presenting their respective cases, he leaned forward to address Margot directly, his tone firm and unyielding. Defendant Margot Vos, the court finds your continuous unlawful surveillance, trespassing on privately owned property, and threatening blackmail communications sent to the plaintiff's associate constitute clear grounds for a temporary stalking protective order, the judge ruled flatly, striking his gavel once against the wooden bench. You are hereby ordered to cease all direct and indirect contact with Elias Vos and Clara Bennett for a period of 6 months effective immediately. No hiring private investigators to track their locations, no sending threatening messages through any digital medium, no approaching within 500 feet of either individual's residence, place of employment, or any property owned by Elias Vos. Violation of this restraining order will result in immediate arrest and misdemeanor criminal prosecution carrying a minimum 30-day jail sentence. Margot's face drained of all color the second the judge finished delivering the ruling, her defense attorneys rushing to huddle beside her to discuss appeal options, as the judge dismissed the preliminary hearing and adjourned court for the day. Elias stood from the plaintiff's table and walked back to the spectator seating row where I sat, a quiet, exhausted flicker of relief softening his stressed features after weeks of unrelenting harassment from his vengeful wife. We finally have legal protection from her stalking tactics, he murmured beside me as we exited the marble courtroom together, keeping a polite, distant gap between our bodies to avoid drawing curious stares from other courthouse visitors lingering in the hallways. Her lawyers can file an appeal of the restraining order, but the higher family court judge will uphold today's ruling given the overwhelming volume of illegal surveillance evidence we submitted. We stepped outside the courthouse onto the concrete front steps, bright midday sunlight filtering down over the city skyline above us. Elias glanced around to ensure none of Margot's hired camera operators lingered nearby, before speaking more openly in a quiet, hushed tone only I could hear. Now that the court's legal barrier blocks her constant harassment, we can book that private ocean villa in the south of France we discussed last month. Margot's travel agency connections can't track international flight bookings under aliases we'll use for the overseas trip. A small weight lifted off my chest hearing the news of our upcoming unmonitored European getaway. For the first time in months, we wouldn't need hidden burner phones or secret remote cabins to spend time together without Margot's vengeful surveillance breathing down our necks. How long can we stay overseas before my mother begins questioning my extended absence from the city? I asked, mindful of creating a believable cover story to explain a weeks-long international trip away from her lakeside estate. I've already coordinated a fake international non-profit volunteer program, Through one of my business associates, overseas charity branches, Elias explained smoothly. You can tell your mother the organization accepted a last-minute volunteer position assisting with art auction fundraisers in the French coastal region for 3 full weeks. She's endlessly passionate about her own charity work. She'll never doubt the legitimacy of the volunteer program cover story we've fabricated. I nodded, relieved we'd crafted a plausible, charity-focused excuse Mom would fully accept without digging deeper into the real reason for my overseas travel plans. Before we parted ways in the courthouse parking garage to return to our separate city residences, Elias slipped a folded printed copy of the restraining order ruling into my purse for safekeeping, in case Margot attempted to disregard the judge's court-mandated no-contact terms and resumed stalking us in the coming weeks. The following 2 weeks passed in unexpected peace, without a single threatening message or surveillance attempt from Margot, the temporary restraining order holding strong as her legal team focused on drafting appeal paperwork rather than launching new harassment campaigns against us. Elias finalized all divorce deposition schedules with his attorneys, the mountain cabin ambush evidence from the restraining order hearing strengthening his case for a clean financial separation from Margot's family corporate assets during the divorce trial. We communicated daily via the primary burner phone, coordinating logistics for our 3-week French coastal villa trip, booking anonymous round-trip international flights under fabricated volunteer aliases, packing separate luggage to travel on different connecting flights and meet at the private villa rental property, drafting the detailed volunteer program cover story I'd recite to Mom before departing the country. The night before I planned to break the news of my overseas volunteer trip to my mother, I sat beside her on the living room sofa after dinner, carefully laying out the pre-printed fake charity program paperwork Elias's associate had supplied to sell the cover story convincingly. The international art charity reached out to me last week offering a 3-week volunteer placement along the French Riviera, I told her, handing over the glossy program brochures and fabricated volunteer acceptance letter across the coffee table. I'd leave day after tomorrow and return 3 weeks later once the coastal auction season wraps up. Mom scanned the printed volunteer paperwork with obvious pride lighting up her features, completely oblivious the entire program was a manufactured lie to hide my private overseas getaway with Elias. This is such a wonderful opportunity for you to gain non-profit experience following in my footsteps, she smiled, setting the brochures down on the wooden table. I'll help you pack your luggage tomorrow morning before your flight departs. Make sure you bring plenty of lightweight clothing for the warm Mediterranean coastal weather. My guilt flared bright again watching her genuine, uncomplicated excitement over the fake volunteer opportunity, knowing every detail of the trip we'd planned was a carefully constructed deception to conceal my forbidden romance with her best friend. I forced a matching bright smile to mask the tangled remorse twisting inside my chest, grateful at least the restraining order's legal barrier would keep Margot far away from us during our weeks abroad. Chapter 9. The day of my international departure arrived quickly. Mom spent the entire morning assisting me with packing rolling suitcases full of summer clothing, toiletry kits, and formal evening attire for the fictional charity auction events I claimed to be coordinating overseas. She hugged me tightly at the airport security checkpoint before I boarded my connecting transatlantic flight, reiterating multiple times to text her regular volunteer updates while I stayed in France. Little did she know every message I sent back home would be typed on my regular personal phone, completely separate from the hidden burner device I'd bring along to communicate privately with Elias during the trip. I boarded the first domestic connecting flight alone as planned, Elias booking a separate cross-country flight departing 3 hours later under an unrelated alias to eliminate any risk of airport surveillance cameras capturing us traveling together. Our pre-arranged meeting point sat at a tiny private coastal airport an hour's drive from the main Nice International Terminal in the south of France. We'd both take separate rental cars to the secluded ocean villa once our transatlantic flights landed on European soil. The 12-hour overseas flight stretched long and tedious, my mind cycling non-stop through every potential complication that could ruin our 3-week unmonitored escape. Margot's appeal judge overturning the restraining order mid-trip, Mom accidentally discovering the fake volunteer charity's non-existent headquarters online, local French paparazzi spotting us together at the villa's private beachfront. I clutched the primary burner phone tucked deep inside my carry-on backpack the entire flight, waiting for Elias's encrypted text confirming his plane had safely touched down in European airspace. Once I cleared customs at the small private Nice airport and retrieved a pre-booked anonymous rental car from the off-site agency lot, I typed a quick message to Elias via the burner phone letting him know I'd arrived safely and was en route to the villa rental property. His reply arrived 4 to 5 minutes later, stating his own transatlantic flight had landed without incident, and he would follow the coastal highway directions to the oceanfront villa within the next hour. The private villa sat tucked between steep limestone cliffs overlooking crystal-clear Mediterranean waters, surrounded by tall private olive groves and locked iron perimeter gates blocking all public access to the property. No neighboring homes existed within a half-mile radius of the sprawling white stucco estate, complete with a secluded infinity pool, private stone beach cove, and walled outdoor patio shaded by blooming citrus trees, far removed from any chance of Margot surveillance or curious tabloid photographers tracking our location overseas. I unlocked the villa's front gate using the digital passcode Elias had shared with me weeks prior, dragging my suitcases inside the open-concept living room and sliding open the floor-to-ceiling glass doors leading out to the oceanfront patio to breathe in the warm salt-scented Mediterranean air. I wandered through the villa's multiple guest suites and master bedroom, marveling at the unobstructed panoramic sea view stretching out across every wall of windows, relieved we'd finally found a space where we wouldn't need to hide our love behind locked storm cellars or distant highway rest stops. An hour after I settled into the villa's master suite, a black European rental sedan pulled up the private gravel driveway leading to the front gate, Elias's vehicle, arriving exactly as he'd predicted in his burner phone text. I rushed to disarm the digital gate lock remotely from the villa's interior control panel, stepping out onto the stone front porch to greet him as he climbed out of the car carrying his own small rolling suitcase. No fake formalities, no distant polite smiles, no constant paranoia of hidden cameras or vengeful spouses looming nearby to interrupt us. Elias dropped his luggage beside the gate and crossed the short stone walkway to pull me into a tight, unhurried embrace, the warm Mediterranean wind tangling through our hair as he pressed a slow, tender kiss to my forehead. 3 full weeks without Margot stalking, without family dinner performances, without hiding our conversations behind locked closets and secret mountain cabins, he murmured against my temple, his voice light with unburdened relief after months of unrelenting conflict back in the States. This villa's fully private, no local paparazzi operate in this remote coastal village, no shared social circles to report our whereabouts back to anyone we know. We spent the first full day of our European getaway exploring the villa's private grounds hand in hand, swimming in the cliffside infinity pool overlooking the turquoise sea, walking the secluded stone beach cove lined with smooth white pebbles, preparing fresh seafood dinners side by side in the fully stocked gourmet kitchen, as the sun dipped low over the Mediterranean horizon each evening. Without the constant threat of Margot's surveillance hanging over our heads, we dropped every mask we'd been forced to wear back home, openly discussing our long-term future plans once Elias's divorce finalized completely. He detailed the final stages of his divorce litigation. All asset division negotiations were nearly wrapped up with his legal team. Margot's appeal against the temporary restraining order had been denied by the higher family court judge the week prior to our overseas departure, and the official divorce trial was scheduled to conclude by early autumn that same year. Once the judge signed the finalized divorce decree, all legal barriers separating us would vanish entirely. Elias would be a single, unmarried man free to openly pursue a public relationship with me without facing adultery accusations from his vengeful ex-wife. I voiced my lingering fear about my mother's inevitable reaction once we returned home, and confessed our secret 4-year romance to her face. Even with the divorce finalized, she'll feel deeply betrayed by both of us for hiding the truth for so long, I admitted one evening as we sat side by side on the oceanfront patio watching the sunset paint the sky soft shades of peach and lavender. She's built decades of unbreakable trust in you as her closest friend. Discovering we've fallen in love behind her back will shatter that bond irreparably at first. Elias laced his fingers through mine atop the weathered teak patio table, squeezing my hand gently in quiet reassurance. I plan to speak to her alone once we fly back to the States, before revealing our relationship to anyone else. I'll lay out every detail of how miserable my marriage to Margot was long before I ever developed feelings for you. Explain we spent years fighting against this connection out of respect for her friendship, before the restraining order and divorce proceedings forced us to confront how deeply we care for each other. She's compassionate at her core. Once she understands we didn't act out of deliberate betrayal, she'll slowly reconcile with us both over time. Over the next 2 weeks of our French coastal escape, we fell into a quiet, peaceful daily rhythm free of all the chaos and scandal waiting back in our hometown. We took short unmonitored drives through tiny hilltop Mediterranean villages far from tourist crowds, sampled local coastal wine at hidden family vineyards tucked into olive groves, and spent countless quiet nights curled together on the villa's beachfront lounge watching waves crash against the private stone cove beneath the starry European night sky. Every few days I sent brief, generic volunteer update texts to my mother on my regular personal phone to maintain the fake charity cover story, careful never to mention Elias's presence anywhere in the messages to avoid arousing her suspicion back home. All private, vulnerable conversations between us remained restricted to the hidden primary burner phone, which I kept locked inside a small travel safe built into the villa's master bedroom closet to eliminate any risk of accidental digital exposure. On the 21st and final day of our 3-week overseas stay, we packed our separate rolling suitcases back into our 2 anonymous rental vehicles, preparing to drive to the private Nice airport the following morning to board our individual transatlantic flights back to the United States. As we sat together on the villa's oceanfront patio for the last sunset of our getaway, Elias turned to face me with a quiet, serious expression I hadn't seen throughout our relaxed weeks abroad. When we land back in the States next week, I intend to schedule a private one-on-one conversation with your mother at her lakeside estate before anyone else learns about our relationship, he told me firmly, his hazel eyes steady and sincere beneath the fading sunset glow. I won't let you carry the burden of confessing our secret romance to her alone. I'll take full responsibility for hiding these feelings over the past 4 years, explain every layer of Margot's toxic marriage and stalking harassment that forced us into hiding together for months on end. My chest tightened with a mix of nervous apprehension and quiet gratitude knowing Elias planned to stand beside me to face my mother's inevitable heartbreak and disappointment once we returned home. I just hope she's willing to listen to the full truth without immediately cutting both of us out of her life permanently, I whispered, staring out across the calm Mediterranean waves stretching toward the distant horizon. Elias pulled me close against his side on the patio bench, wrapping the thick linen throw blanket we'd used every evening around both our shoulders against the cool coastal night breeze. Whatever her initial reaction may be, we'll face it together. I'm done hiding the love I hold for you behind lies, secret burner phones, and remote overseas villas once this trip concludes. After the divorce decree signs this autumn, I intend to introduce you to every business associate and social acquaintance in my life openly as my partner, no more hidden glances or forced distant formalities for the rest of our lives. Chapter 10. Our transatlantic flights back to the United States landed early morning 3 days later, Elias catching his separate domestic flight back to the downtown city penthouse, while I drove straight from the airport to my mother's lakeside estate to unpack my luggage and drop off the fake volunteer charity brochures I'd brought back from France to sell the cover story fully. Mom greeted me at the front door with a warm, relieved hug, eager to hear every detail of my supposed 3-week overseas art volunteer work along the French Riviera. I fabricated lengthy, generic stories about fictional charity auctions and coastal volunteer projects as we unpacked my suitcases together upstairs in my bedroom, carefully avoiding any mention of Elias's presence overseas to prevent slipping up and revealing our secret getaway together. Once all luggage was unpacked and stowed away in the closet, I excused myself to my bedroom under the pretense of catching up on sleep from the long transatlantic flight, slipping the primary burner phone out of my travel safe to send Elias an encrypted text confirming I'd arrived safely back at the lake house. His reply arrived within minutes, I've cleared my afternoon schedule completely. I'll drive out to your mother's estate in 2 hours to request a private, one-on-one conversation with her to explain everything between us before the divorce trial concludes this autumn. Be prepared to join us once I've laid out the full context of my toxic marriage and our 4-year hidden romance for her. My heart hammered with nervous anxiety reading his message, pacing back and forth across my bedroom floor as I mentally rehearsed every possible way Mom might react once the truth spilled out into the open after years of careful deception. I spent the next 2 hours sitting silently beside her downstairs in the living room, forcing casual small talk about the fictional French volunteer program, while waiting for Elias's vehicle to pull into the long gravel driveway leading to our home. When his black SUV finally